Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Kathryn.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. Today we have another special guest episode and I am joined by Sandrine, who is the Relaxed Nutritionist. Love that title. And she specialises in digestive health, anxiety and hormone health. Now, all of these things actually do impact on our energy levels, and that is where we're going to be focusing our attention today. We're specifically talking about nutrition from a energy point of view. How we can get better energy, have some quick wins, just a few myths, have a few tips. So, welcome to the podcast, Sandrine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Can't wait to get stuck into this. I know I'm also aware I'm probably going to end up hungry by the time we finish recording. So let's
Absolutely.
we're going to talk about lots of tasty ingredients. But let's just start for a minute about why energy matters, because I guess one of our lessons really is all food is not created equal, isn't it? A calorie is very different when it's perhaps a calorie in a donut compared to a calorie in something more nutritious.
Yes, indeed. Yes. No, energy is everything, right? Energy is what keeps us going. So if we don't eat the food that we need, then we're not going to be able to do the things that we want to do. And these days, I think it's really easy to, we've got so much on, and sometimes we can forget to eat. But actually, the body catches up with you. So you really have to. It's a bit like a car, essentially.
Yeah.
If you don't put petrol in your car, you're not going to go very far. So energy, helps you do all the things, but it helps your body functions really well, and it actually needs a lot, including your brain. And where we're talking about energy, we're talking about concentration, we're talking about, being alert all day long. We need that fuel for, to feel good.
Yeah. All fuel is not quite created equal, is it? If we're liking it, I totally understand what you're saying. We literally do need to treat fuel as our source of energy. But if I just scoffed on donuts all day, yes, I'm putting fuel in, but it's probably like putting the poor quality stuff in, isn't it? Rather than what's really going to serve me well.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we call empty nutrition or empty calories, because
Mm.
they're not bringing you the vitamins and the minerals that our body is so desperate for. All these vitamins, A, B, C, D, and so on, they all have a function in the body, and we get them from food. We don't get them from anywhere else, apart from maybe a little bit of vitamin D from the sun, but everything else has to come from our food. So you're right, the donuts will not have a huge amount of vitamin C, for example, and then another thing that you don't get in, say, highly processed ingredients or those treats that we, referring to, is things like fiber and healthy fats, and again, that are really needed for our brain to function well. So absolutely, we need those vital vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also, am I right in thinking that it's not uncommon for people to have sort of peaks and troughs in their energy according to what they're eating? It will be directly impacting that. It's not just what we're doing. We might think, oh, I've done all this physical activity and now I'm tired. It could actually have a connection to what they've eaten that day.
Yeah, absolutely. So the people that feel this kind of yo-yo effect, when you eat something, you feel pretty good, and then you feel like you're kind of crashing again. That's probably because the food that was in your plate was, mainly carbohydrate or sugar, which then gets burned quite quickly. So what we want to do is slow down the consumption of calories, basically, and we do that by adding protein and fiber. And you were talking about when we eat food is really important, and obviously the combination, what is on our plate. And our body really loves it when we eat regularly. It kind of expect, the next meal, it's really clever in that way. But when we start skipping meals or having really small meals that are not filling enough, you then get this roller coaster effect, and your body has to work so hard to manage this to a point where we have a hormone called insulin that basically manages the glucose in our body and basically directs it into the cells. And when we get insulin to work too many times in a day, i.e., every time we eat, it comes to a point where it goes, hey, I've had enough. I'm too tired now. I'm going to stop working. And that can lead on to health conditions like type 2 diabetes and things like that. So, yes, our body loves it when we eat regularly, and 3 meals a day is a good first start if we can, because some people are not keen in having breakfast first thing in the morning, and that's fine. That's completely fine. I'm really encouraging people to listen to their appetite and actually eat when they're hungry, as opposed to, oh, it's 1 o'clock, I need to eat, So if you have your breakfast a bit later, then it's okay to kind of move those other 2 meals, along. But the body also likes to have a rest. So when we don't eat anything for 3-4 hours, that's when the body repairs itself. So there's reasons why eating 3 meals a day is a really good idea to maintain our energy throughout the day, but also to allow the body to repair itself.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose most people are going to have a natural fast, because I'm aware that's another very trendy thing to talk about, isn't it? Fasting. I want to ask
Mm-hmm.
your views about that actually, but I guess we naturally have one between going to bed and when we're up in the morning, if let's assume most people do have a normal daytime working shift. But do you think perhaps we are eating for longer during the day than necessary, that the window in which we are eating is perhaps longer than it should be or than is good for us? Or do you think that's very much on an individual basis?
Yeah, I think it can be on an individual basis, because you mentioned, people that are working on a night shift, for example, kind of, for them it's really tricky to get the right balance. But for someone who's working, say, not normal hours, um, again, it's asking yourself, okay, what time did I have my dinner? Was it quite late? Because I think a lot of people do end up eating quite late because, maybe you're putting your children to sleep first and then you want to enjoy a nice meal with your partner, or, um, but actually, the body doesn't really like it when there's a lot of food in our system before we go to bed. So, you know, bringing dinner as early as possible is a good idea to help you sleep better to start with. But then, like you said, that window where we are sort of fasting, the longer it can be, the more reparative, it will help you repair your body more, basically. So then it's thinking, okay, so breakfast, I meet a lot of my clients, ladies who are like, I don't fancy breakfast first thing in the morning. So then it's thinking, okay, is it because you had a late dinner, which makes sense? So yes, do wait until you're hungry to have that first meal. And then some people will be like, I really need my breakfast, otherwise my blood sugar drops.
Mm.
And that's my daughter. She loves her breakfast because she hasn't got a big dinner. She doesn't really enjoy dinner that much. So that's why, everything that I do is all about personalized nutrition, because everyone is different. So listening to your body is going to help hugely work out when is the best time to eat for you.
Yeah, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because like most things, there's going to be elements that perhaps work well for you. But we're specifically talking about energy. And I can imagine there are people listening who, it's at that time of year, we're in autumn, things are getting darker earlier. I always feel a bit like hibernating, but it can feel like, and I suppose this isn't unique to winter. We're going to talk about seasons actually a bit in a moment. But I feel like there is the potential for you feel like you've got a slump in your energy. And I don't always mean necessarily the afternoon slump, which I'm sure you're going to say there might be a reason for having the afternoon slump, but about, how the things that we can do to try and keep our energy a little bit more steady during the
Mm.
day, as opposed to having those kind of peaks and troughs. And I think people are thinking, how do I start to know what works well for me? Do I just have to experiment and see what works? Or is it a certain food that I should automatically be thinking that's probably a no, and maybe something else is going to be a good recommendation for me?
That's a really, really good point, actually. And sometimes, again, I find a lot of people feel quite disconnected with how they feel about food, and they kind of run their lives on an automatic pilot, right? You just get on with your day, you know what you're doing in the day, you just do it automatically. But actually, what I try to encourage people to do is to actually listen to their body. And maybe the first step is actually to write down what you eat in a day, because that is actually such a really good exercise to do. It's a real eye opener. And then you can see when you eat the majority of your food. And, I find that people tend to have quite a large dinner because that's a traditional way of
Mm.
leading your life, because perhaps your partner is going to work and making dinner for everybody. Lunch seems to be a bit of an afterthought because, again, you're busy trying to juggle all sorts of things. And then breakfast is, well, if it's there, great. If it's not, sometimes it gets skipped. So when actually, as you probably know, I'm from France originally, and in France we tend to have more food at lunchtime. And I'm not talking the extravagant meal with 2 glasses of wine every day, like just literally just a
That's a
nice.
shame.
You can go for that if you like, but obviously if you've got work to do, you may not want to go for
I think
that.
that might well and truly contribute to the energy slump that I mentioned, to be asleep after that.
Exactly that. Need a siesta after that. Um, but basically switching the large meal to lunch time as opposed to dinner time, and having something a bit lighter at dinner time can really make a difference in terms of energy, because it means that you have the fuel for the afternoon to keep going. And, even if you feel that you need a little pick me up, and I always say to people, if you're hungry, eat. You know, it's not a problem, but it's just what you eat that's going to keep you going. And if you just reach for something, again, high in carbohydrates, that's going to create that spike in your energy, and then that kind of crash later. To avoid that is to have a snack that is actually filling, with a bit of protein, a bit of fiber, a bit of healthy fat. You can still have your favorite thing, but just add something to it. Does that make sense?
It does. And let's talk about this idea of the bigger lunch then, because I feel like that you're right. I think most people probably do have the larger meal in the evenings. Hopefully, it's the time we have family together, and sometimes it does creep later as well. And you were saying about you want your body to be resting. I always remember the phrase "resting, not digesting." That's what we're supposed to be doing overnight. So I remember that phrase. But the idea of introducing a larger lunch, see, my system sort of says to me, well, hang on, won't that just make me sluggish in the afternoon? But I think what you're saying, isn't it more important about what has constituted that bigger lunch that I'm having? And if I just made it like fully carb heavy, I probably would feel sluggish in the afternoon because I've given myself perhaps an energy spike that I'm then going to come down from. Whereas if I actually had that bigger lunch in a way that was more balanced, and maybe we'll talk about what that looks like, I could actually maintain my energy throughout the afternoon, not have that slump, have the lighter dinner, and then perhaps even sleep well. So I've got a compounding effect of good things happening later. Is that a fair assessment?
Exactly that. Spot on. Yeah, exactly that. So think about the dinner that you would normally have, right? You'd have some protein, you probably have a couple of veg, 2 or 3 veg, and you have some carbs, right?
Yeah.
So that's your winning formula, basically. Really simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. So if you look at your lunch, and you wouldn't say normally have a sandwich, right? Lots of people have a sandwich for lunch, which is fine. It's not a problem with that. You've got your carbs, and then usually the filling will have some protein of some sort, hopefully. But what you're missing is your veggies, right? And if you look at a plate and you kind of divide it in half, and then in half again. So you've got a quarter of protein, a quarter of carbs, and then half should be veg. So really all you need to do is either add a soup or a salad to your sandwich. And then straight away you're giving your body this, kind of shower of vitamins and minerals that you wouldn't normally have if you just have a sandwich. And that's why then the energy drops. So yeah, it can be really, really simple. It's just by adding something that you would
Yeah.
not have at lunchtime.
And with that addition of salad or vegetable soup, whatever form it might take, does that also help you maintain the energy levels? It's not because I don't often associate the idea of vegetables and salad as much as I do with being healthy, yes, but with helping sustain energy levels.
Yes, it really does. Because what do you have in vegetables? You've got all your vitamins and minerals that we are so desperate for. Our body are so depleted at the moment because, they've done research where, if you were to eat a carrot today and you compare it with your grandmother's carrot, the nutrition is completely different. It's a lot poorer in nutrients. So it means we need to eat a lot more of them to get to the same level. But how is that helping you with energy? So, yep, the vitamins, vitamin C, for example, is vital for energy, but also it's the fiber, and it is the fiber that's keeping you full, and that is kind of stopping you from reaching
Okay.
out for something sweet later. What I found really tricky is when you're out and about, and if you're working out and about, in an office somewhere, and you go out and get lunch somewhere, what I really struggle with is I find the lunch, boxes or whatever, too small and not filling enough. So in a way, it kind of makes sense what people feel hungry in the afternoon and want to reach for something, because what they've had at lunchtime is just not filling enough. But actually, the plant food will really make you feel full and more energized and more satisfied overall. Yeah.
Oh, that's so helpful. I want to talk a bit about the seasons, Sandrine. We're going to come back on to actual food items and some of your top tips because I'm starting to get hungry already, I have to say. But let's talk a little about eating with the seasons because I know that this is something you're passionate about and from a few different standpoints, which was really interesting for me to hear. Because, well, first of all, so does this matter for the food we eat when it comes to thinking about the season? So we're in autumn now. Are there certain things that I should be looking for and certain things I should be avoiding? Because let's be honest, I can go into the supermarket and probably find whatever I want. And that's another reason why I think perhaps people can find this idea of trying to manage their food for good energy quite tricky, right? Because we can go in and we can buy pretty much anything we like at any time of year. And then we have lots of things packaged up nicely for us that we can just take off the shelves and eat, and they're tasty, even though they're probably not nutritionally very great for us. That'll be the biscuits that Kirsty and I are such fans of. But sorry, I slightly digress. But let's talk a little bit about the importance of the seasons, and also on the point of view of seasons. Should I be eating differently in winter than in summer as well? Do I have different needs even at different times of year, or is that just in my head that I like the idea of hibernating and eating lots of warm things and staying indoors? So I've asked you quite a lot there, but let's talk a little bit about eating with the seasons.
Okay, so yes, eating in the season I think, is amazing because, well, number one, the produce that you're going to find are going to be so much more tasty than if you buy, let's take an example, let's take a tomato, okay? So if you buy a tomato in December and then you buy one in July, you can look at the color, and one is going to be a deep red, really, really deep red and quite juicy. And the other one is going to be quite pale red and quite hard and probably grown in a greenhouse, right, with artificial heating. So in terms of taste, there is no comparison. The produce that will be grown, with the sunshine, will be so much more tasty than the one that's grown in a greenhouse. So taste is really important. And the other thing is the actual nutrition. In terms of vitamins and minerals, you will have a lot more. The seasonal produce will have a lot more to offer than something that's out of season. And then the third point, which I think people are becoming a bit more aware, is in terms of air miles and where these produce are coming from, right? So an example would be asparagus. The asparagus season in the UK is quite short. Is it about a month, maybe two? It's quite short. But you go to a supermarket and you find asparagus all year round. But one, they're expensive. But why are they expensive? It's because they're probably flying from the other side of the planet, South America or somewhere like that. And then taste-wise, that will be very, very different. Now, I accept the fact that it's very hard to know what's in season when you go to a supermarket. I just done my shop, for the week, and I did it online. I went up to pick it up on Sunday morning, and everything just looks the same. It's the same size in the same packets, and it's so uninspiring. Then if you go somewhere, a farmer's market, or I live in South London, and we have quite a lot of shops on the high street that sell fresh produce. And if you go there, everything is in season. It's wonderful, looks amazing, tastes amazing, and it's probably cheaper, actually, a lot cheaper than a supermarket as well. So these are all the lovely reasons why eating with the season is fantastic. And also it just keeps the excitement alive of, oh, we're going to eat this month. We didn't have it last month because it wasn't ripe. Lots of people have got apples at the moment, probably coming out of their ears, but
Yes.
because because if you do, it's when they're ready, right? You need to do something with them. But it's just so nice to be able to eat things that are, ready, ripe, delicious.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It feels like, the choice is just there. So I'm starting to think, I've got some tomatoes that I bought the other day, and they still look quite good, but maybe they've just come from further away. It's interesting, isn't it? And you don't necessarily think of it affecting the nutrition because it's perhaps been picked so long ago that it's not got the nutritional value of it if it was something that was picked locally and fresh. So there's lots to think about. So let's think. So it is sort of autumn, winter. Let's give people a few ideas of what's a great ingredient or a few of your favorites to be looking out for at this time of year.
The things that I put in my basket on Sunday was things like I saw some squashes. I haven't bought one yet because I'm also all for convenience, when it comes to preparing fresh ingredients and tasty food. So squashes you can find frozen ones, that's already peeled and cut for you, and you could just chuck a handful to make a soup in like minutes. So I do that, but I do also like to buy more like specialized squashes, the different types. And there's one which has quite a really dark red skin. It looks a bit like a pumpkin, but it's much smaller. And it almost tastes like chestnuts. And I'm basically making soup with it with added chestnut pieces. And that I'm so looking forward to this because it's really, really tasty. So yeah, squashes are definitely in seasons. Things like parsnip, things like, all your root vegetables, beetroot. Huge fan of beetroot. It's really helpful to detox the body, and it's got lots of, antioxidant with the color. And so I make beetroot pancakes for my daughter, but I also make a beetroot hummus, which is really nice. So yeah, so your root vegetables will be in season. I'm thinking I've got some parsnip in my fridge, and I've got some apples from our little tree. So I'm going to make a parsnip and apple soup this evening. So there we go. Another idea for you.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I know. It's starting to rumble now. um, So, but yeah, and also just going back to this idea, because obviously I think of winter comfort food, it's sort of your stews, your casseroles, your roast dinners, and so on. Not to say that's not a good thing. You can obviously be just as healthy with those as you perhaps can be in summer with your salads. But does that mean, am I eating different amounts of calories in winter than I am in summer, or should I be, is perhaps the question? Or is that actually not a factor? It's just perhaps the feelings I'm associating with, oh, it's summer, something light, not as many calories, to it's winter, stodgy puddings come out, all that kind of thing.
I think in terms of calories, we probably need more or less the same amount, unless you're someone that is working outside, for example, in the cold, right? If you're a gardener, you probably will want to eat, or a builder will want to eat, more filling food that really are going to keep you, feeling satisfied, full, and yeah, feeling good. But if you're indoors, sitting at a desk all day, then probably, your calorie intake should probably be very, very similar. But what we do need to do is, in the summer, you're more attracted to salad and things that are very hydrating, because when we are hot, we're sweating, and
Mm.
so you want to keep your body really hydrated. In the winter, you just want to keep your body warm. And also, it's much easier to digest warm food than it is cold food. So like it's asking for extra energy in a way to digest a salad, than if you're feeling a little bit chilly, you just want something that's warming, that's going to help your digestion and make you feel really nice and cozy. So here we
Oh,
go.
I did not know that. I did not know that. Okay, let's talk a bit about. I imagine this is probably one of the biggest hurdles that people say to you. I'm guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to food, because I feel like we can all be enthusiastic about it, but I sometimes I just want it to appear in front of me, if I'm being completely honest. So there's
Mhm.
two things. There is the time to cook these lovely nutritious meals that we've been talking about, and perhaps also the expense. So I'm wondering if perhaps we can spend a bit of time busting a few myths about, you know, that it's not necessarily always time consuming and expensive to eat well or healthily and to maintain our energy levels as we've been discussing. So I'm wondering what are your thoughts on that? Is that an obstacle that comes up for you from people?
Definitely, definitely. You know, people will tend to say, "Oh, eating healthy is expensive," and it can be if you go for certain options. So, like for example, excuse me, you know, if you go for organic produce, for example, which in an ideal world, it will be amazing if we could all eat organic, because that means less pesticides, less chemicals that we ingest, and then our body has to deal with those. So we want to try and limit those. But we don't have to buy everything organic. In fact, there's a list called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, and it will basically show you that there's clean 15, so 15 produce that you can buy. Not, they don't have to be organic. They probably have a skin or something that protects them, which means that you take, you know, you remove those and the inside is totally fine and protected from all the pesticides. So that's your clean 15. The dirty doesn't tend to be produce that will absorb some of the pesticides. So if you can, if you're able to, go for organic, fantastic. If you can't, it's better to still eat those produce than not eat them at all. So that's one thing to consider when it comes to price. The other thing people will say, and it's true, that food has gone up in price. I mean, that's you know, I get that, and I've seen it in my shop, and I see it all the time. But it's just thinking in a clever way, you know, I guess. It's thinking, okay, if you want a meat dish, which, you know, meat and fish are quite expensive, is how can you, if you're going to make a casserole, can you bulk it up with things, you know, with ingredients? Can you bulk it up with beans and just have the meat as a flavor as opposed to a big portion for
Mm.
everybody? Because I think we tend to eat too much meat anyway, like in terms of portion size. If you look at the palm of your hand, that is basically what you need in, you know, in a meal, basically. That's your portion size. Quite often is double that. If you think of a chicken breast, it's very often the size of your whole hand, when actually half is fine. So you use a little bit of chicken in your casserole and then add some beans, which are very affordable, right? So that's another way of looking at it. And then shopping around can be really helpful. Like I said, you know, I bought a little packet of leeks and it's got three tiny things in the bag, and I paid nearly £2 for this. If I go to my local fruit and veg place, you know, I can get two big leeks for half the price. So it's kind of being aware of this and just shopping around. In terms of like cheaper ingredients, so things like cereals like barley and things like that you can add to casserole, again, make them nice and filling. And then beans, I tend to buy cooked beans because it helps me save time. But if you wanted to save money, you could buy the dried ones. You soak them overnight and then you cook them in the pressure cooker if you've got one. And you can make quite a big amount and freeze some. The freezer is your friend when it comes to making, you know, larger quantities and then freezing the leftovers. So there's quite a few things to consider.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I know you very kindly said you've got a high energy shopping list that you will share with everyone. We'll put that in the notes. But can you just give us an idea of what some of your favorite things that are sort of some quick wins? You know, like perhaps you've got some leftovers and you're thinking, how can I make this more interesting? Because then you've actually got a double win. I think leftovers are perhaps a secret that we're not tapping into. I know certainly I'm not, and I know you're a big fan of them. So I'd love to hear some tips on this. So that saves you both time and money, right? Because you presumably it's something that you've had the night before. You've got some
Mhm.
leftovers, but I look at them and I'm just not inspired. I'm thinking, how on earth is this going to make lunch or something? I'm not really sure. But you've got this idea of like having a few key quick add-ons and things to make it into something new and interesting. So I'm sure that's going to be enticing for people. So please do let us know what some of those favorite things are.
Okay, so yes, I mean this high shopping list, it's very simple really, but they're like basic staple to have in your cupboard, you know, when your fridge is very bare and you kind of go, I've got nothing to eat, you can, you know, come up with something. So I mentioned pulses. I'm a huge fan of pulses. So your chickpeas, your beans, your lentils, they are a winner because you can use them instead of carbs. So if you haven't got bread in the house, you can't make a sandwich, you can make something with beans. And this is when your leftover comes in really handy because if you've got some kind of sauce with a little bit of meat or some flavor, because that's what you want. You want some flavor. And then you can have some beans, and then you can add salad on the side, or you can add some veggies. And what I tend to do is when I even just steam vegetables, I try to steam a bit more so that I have some for the next day and I just reheat them. And when it's there, and you just have to go one of these, one of these, one of these in the microwave, and off we go. It's so simple and so, so tasty. So it's thinking about that base that you can have, especially in the winter, with maybe a bit of a sauce that you can just reheat. And then, you can have these pouches of rice that's already cooked or cook more rice the night before so you can have some the next day. And same with vegetables, just cook a little bit more and then you have it the next day. Most of my lunches are leftovers. If not, they're usually egg based. Very simple, very easy to make. Are
Okay.
you happy with it?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just say on a typical day, and I know we acknowledged that it's going to be different for everyone. Some people might be more into skipping breakfast maybe, or they eat later on in the day. But let's just give perhaps an example, if we can, for people. If they're thinking, right, I'm really inspired to have something really nutritious today. Let's just say a day in your life, Sandrine. What would be on the menu for, say, an idea for breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Maybe you wouldn't have all three of them necessarily in the same day, or maybe you would, because I think sometimes people are not understanding quite the volume of what they're eating. It might actually be less than they think. Certainly, in terms of when you talked about the balance on the plates, there might be more emphasis on the different ingredients being there. Well, actually, they could have a fuller plate of food. It's just got a different makeup of what's on that plate. And I
Mm.
think it would just be nice to give people some ideas of where they might start, even just perhaps, and they could pick one of the dishes that you might talk about for the
Yeah, no,
day.
a typical day would start with overnight oats. So I make a big jar of overnight oats. So it's oats, porridge oats, okay, mixed with a liquid. I usually use water, to be honest, but you could do it with milk if you wanted to. And then I add flavor, I'll add some seeds, I'll add, because it's for me and my daughter, it needs to be chocolatey. So a bit of cacao powder in there, lots of seeds and protein powder, and just really loading it up with nutrition because she's quite a fussy eater, so breakfast is key. She loves her breakfast, so that's what we do. So in the morning I get the jar out, I just pour 3 tablespoons in a bowl, warm it up, add yogurt and whatever else I want to put on top. Could be fruit, could be seeds or whatever. So that's the morning, really quick. But I make it on the Sunday. I make this big jar. So that's almost kind of breakfast done for the week, pretty much.
Oh, I
Okay.
was going to say, so is this a jar that then can last you for, you don't have to do every night for the next day?
I do it at least 5 days. Yeah, it lasts
Okay.
5 days. So really handy. And that's for the two of us. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then the lunch would be, so say I've made some sort of casserole the night before, for the family. I would definitely save some for myself before my husband finishes it all. And that's a big tip.
You're like, that's my lunch tomorrow. You're not having that.
Absolutely. It is a really big tip. So it's either, cook a bit more or save some for
Yeah.
yourself. So you eat a little bit less yourself in the evening for that evening meal, but keep it for the lunch the next day. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I literally open my pantry and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna add beans to it. I'm gonna have peas, rice or quinoa. I will sometimes cook quite a big portion of quinoa and then I'll freeze it. And then in the morning, I might take a portion out because I know there is something in the fridge that needs a little bit of carbs and I've already got my veggies. I have to say I eat a lot of raw vegetables because I like them. And even in the winter, I still eat quite a lot of veg. And the other day, I was making a salad that I was sharing in my Facebook group. And my portions are pretty big. So you really can go with eating quite a lot of vegetables. And I think the key thing, if you want to, stay healthy and support your gut, and is having different types of veg, like as many different types as possible, is more beneficial then having a huge pile of broccoli or a huge pile of carrot, a bit of broccoli, a bit of carrot, a bit of something else is really, really good for your health. So I've completely digressed. Porridge in the morning,
Yeah.
leftover for lunch, and then the evening, it has to be quick in my house, like lots of people. My daughter doesn't eat the same thing as us, so I need to make something that she enjoys because she finds eating really stressful. So I make things that, like sweet potato wedges and something that I can cook in the air fryer. And then on the side of that, I need to cook something for myself and my husband. So which will always be some protein, some veg, and some carbs. Very, very simple. I'm a huge fan of tray bake, where you put everything on the tray and it goes in the oven.
Yes.
um, yeah, things like that. One pot dishes, either in a pressure cooker or in a casserole type dishes. Yeah, really simple food, but that's it. That's what we eat really in a day.
Yeah. Lovely. Tell me a little bit more about these raw vegetables because I was thinking, what do I'm thinking carrot sticks and sometimes pepper sticks, but I don't think I eat an awful lot of raw vegetables. So I'm really intrigued to know it. Do you think people assume there are vegetables that need to be cooked when actually they don't? And what would be your top tips on because I'm not sure how enticing it, if I just chopped up a cauliflower and tried to chomp on it, how exciting that would be, or whether that would even be recommended. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your
Yeah.
tips for raw vegetables.
Absolutely. So what I tend to do is, when I do a shop, I will buy some green leafy veg, like salad type vegetables. They need to be eaten first, obviously, because they will go off quite quickly. So I know today I've got Swiss chard in my fridge and I need to cook them if I don't want them to go off. So I usually probably will have that at lunchtime with some eggs of some sort, whether it's an omelette, and I have the Swiss chard that I cook in the same pan. That's the other thing I love doing is cooking everything in one pan, less washing. Um, but what I do keep a lot is vegetables that keep, a long time. So yes, your carrot, your celery. I'm a huge fan of fennel. Do you like fennel? Not everyone likes fennel. It's quite distinctive taste. Um,
Yeah,
peppers, absolutely. Cucumbers, I will get some in the summer, but I don't tend to buy them. I find them quite tasteless. So, that's my preference. But that's another one you could have raw. Another thing I really love, but then maybe that's just me, is pointed cabbage. You know, the sweet cabbage, the long one,
yeah,
green one. So I'll very often in the evening, I will chop it up to steam it to then serve it with my meal. But I absolutely love the middle bit, the really crunchy bit. Raw is really, really tasty. I find it tasty. So
mm,
I'll munch on that. And what else do I eat raw? Yeah, broccoli, you can eat it raw. Cauliflower, you can eat them all raw. Perhaps what you need is a little dip. And that's when a nice hummus, like a beetroot hummus or something like that, or a nice dressing with tahini. Tahini paste, the sesame,
yes, yeah.
with lemon juice and olive oil and garlic. And that's it. You just need a little dip. And before you know it, you've eaten a whole bowl of it. And that's it. That's your portion for that meal. So it's once you have the ingredients in the house and in the fridge, it's much easier to actually eat them.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you've highlighted is we can take something that seems quite boring and just make it a new dish and more interesting again. And it doesn't have to cost the earth and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. So I think you shared some really helpful tips. And we'll put the that high energy shopping list and some of your top
Yeah.
tips in the show notes for people. Maybe we could mention that clean 15 and the dirty dozen as well. I've not heard that before in the context of food. So that was really interesting. Thank you so much, Sandrine, for sharing all of your lovely tips. We've got a question to end the episode for everyone today, and it's what's a new dish or recipe or ingredient that you're inspired to try this week to give yourself an energy boost? And I'm going to have to say, I'm going to experiment with some raw vegetables. And I was thinking, I had a vision of me looking like a little rabbit with my bowl of vegetables, but it's making it tasty with those extras. And I like the idea of the dressing or the beetroot hummus. I think it's giving yourself something really tasty to have with it. And then it feels like more of a treat, doesn't it? Rather than just like, oh, I'm being good and having something
Absolutely.
healthy.
It has, in my world, when people work with me, the first thing I do is try and inspire them to get like excited about food again. Because I think we can, get stuck in a rut and looking at these vegetables that all look the same, that we all cook in the same way week in, week out. You do get bored, don't you? You don't, you do, even I do, So sometimes it's like, just think of one idea in the week, like once a week, just think of something that you can make slightly differently. And I'll give you another example is broccoli. I mean, steamed broccoli is, sorry, but it's a little bit on the boring side. But get a grater and do broccoli rice. I know it sounds weird, but grate it, saute that in a pan with some onions, add some seasoning. Then you add, I think I cook it with some mushrooms and then some chickpeas. And then you've got this really nice vegetarian dishes that look so different from what you're used to. And very often I will then cook a little fried egg on the side and just add it on top. And that's such a delicious lunch.
Oh, wow. I really want to try that. We are a fan of broccoli in this house, but I have to be honest, yeah, just steamed as it is, we eat an awful lot of broccoli. But actually, I'm definitely game for trying it in a different way. Because would I be right in thinking that maybe nutritionally it can be more beneficial when things haven't been cooked or steamed, or is that less important than I'm thinking it might be?
You know what? It really depends on the actual produce. For example, tomatoes, when they're cooked, there is an antioxidant called lycopene, which actually develops when it's cooked.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So that's that one. But it's kind of the same way I think with carrots and beta carotene and that sort of thing. But yeah, it really depends. The best thing to do is to vary. One day you have it raw, one day you cook it, and then that way, you're getting everything that you need,
Yeah.
in different
Just have the
forms.
veg, basically. So really is what really matters, isn't it? Have the veg, hopefully in season as well. Thank you so much, Sandrine. I know I'm definitely hungry now. I did say I'm gonna have to make sure we record this when I'm not hungry, but hopefully we've given people a lot of inspiration for eating for balanced energy and some tips that they can put into practice straight away. So thank you so much. We'll make sure we pop where we can find you in the show notes and some of those resources that we mentioned. And I think that's it for this week, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.